Welcome in, everyone. Have you ever had one of those days where your entire life plan just, completely implodes?
Oh, yeah. I think we've all been there.
Right. You absolutely know the feeling. Everything you thought was certain, like the meticulously mapped out trajectory of your future it's suddenly gone in a flash.
Just wiped out.
Exactly. And the only logical next step your brain can possibly compute in that moment is to pack your bags and take a job on a literal alien prison planet.
I mean, it is quite the extreme pivot.
Just a little bit.
But that is exactly the mission for today's deep dive. We are examining the fascinating real-life interstellar journey of Dr. Lualati Ortiz.
Yeah.
The sources we've gathered today, and this ranges from her personal logs and medical record to the actual operational mandates of the mail-order bride program, they document this incredibly radical career shift.
It's such a massive shift.
It really is. We're looking at a woman moving from a highly sterile, deeply predictable space station to becoming the premier, and frankly only human, OBGYN on the snowy frontier penal colony known as Zabria Prenar 1.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking at Lualati's initial situation, the catalyst for this massive life change is just intensely relatable, even if the destination isn't.
Absolutely.
We have to look at the breaking point. The sources describe Lualati as this exhausted, deeply overworked doctor stationed on floor 600 of Alora Station.
She's just totally burnt out.
Completely. And she's taking a much-needed break on what happens to be her very last day of work. She's sitting there eating a halo.
Oh, those are amazing.
So good. Which, for those who haven't had one, is this beautiful, multi-layered Filipino dessert. It's got shaved ice, evaporated milk, coconut, ube, mango. It's this complex, comforting taste of home.
Right.
And while she's eating it, she's actively trying to convince herself that the profound dread she feels about her upcoming wedding is just, normal premarital stress.
Denial's a powerful thing.
It really is. So she heads home to her apartment, opens the door, and what does she hear? The classic, undeniable squeaking of her own bed frame. Yes. She catches her fiancé of 5 years, Bryson, actively cheating on her.
And this specific moment is where we see Lualati's true psychological resilience mapped out in her personal accounts. The betrayal is profound.
5 years.
Right. She notes the bitter irony of wasting 5 years of her life on a man who never even bothered to buy her a ring, only to find him with someone else in their shared space.
In her own apartment.
Exactly. She describes feeling a total collapse of her identity. She actually notes she felt like she could just dissolve into a puddle of depressed Lualati goo.
Which is such a vivid way to describe it.
It is. But the thing is, she doesn't. Instead, she relies on a fundamental principle of physics to survive her emotional trauma. She uses inertia.
Inertia. An object in motion stays in motion.
Yes.
She figures if she stops, the gravity of the betrayal will just crush her completely.
Precisely. She recognizes that if she pauses to process the grief in that sterile apartment, she will shatter. So she immediately responds to a bizarre text message she'd received earlier that day from a woman named Tasha.
Right, the recruiter.
Yeah, it was a job offer to work as a provincial physician for a group of convicted Zabrian murderers. It is the ultimate survival reflex disguised as a reckless career move.
Which brings her to the ultimate rebound job. She doesn't even hesitate. She packs her life into boxes and just hops on a shuttle.
Talk about a leap of faith.
Truly. But reading her logs about her arrival on Zabria Prenar 1 is fascinating because the reality of the planet hits her the second she steps off the ship.
Literally hits her.
Yeah. She touches down on this frozen, aggressively muddy frontier, and her chosen armor for this new life, a long, white, belted trench coat and spindly stiletto boots.
Oh my goodness.
She immediately sinks into the mud and nearly breaks her ankle. I was reading this and thinking, why on earth would a brilliant doctor choose stiletto boots for a snow planet?
Well, it perfectly illustrates the psychological clash of her two worlds. She is dressing for the sterile, climate-controlled corridors of Alora Station, clinging to the professional identity that Bryson couldn't destroy.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right, but the environment of Zabria Prenar 1 immediately strips that away. And that clash is completely personified by the welcome committee she receives.
Yes, the two wardens.
The sources describe two very different figures. First, you have Warden 10, who is remarkably warm and welcoming, characterized by these bright orange eyes. But then you have Warden Hallam.
And Hallam is Lualati's newly assigned protector and her actual roommate.
Exactly.
And Hallam is the absolute antithesis of her chaotic, crumbling human life. The descriptions of him are striking. He is towering. A 7-foot-tall, impossibly strict former military commander.
Very intimidating.
Very. He has stormy gray eyes, perfectly sleek black hair tied tightly back, a prehensile tail hooked neatly to his belt, and a demeanor that suggests he might be carved directly out of the planet's ice.
He is rigidity personified. And as you already know, Zabrian baseline biology runs infinitely hotter than a human's. They radiate immense furnace-level heat.
Right.
But what the source text does so well here is filter that known biological fact through Luahati's perspective as a newly arrived medical professional who is quite literally freezing to death in the snow.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the way her clinical perspective collides with his biology is pure narrative gold.
It's brilliant.
Luahati is shivering violently in her ruined trench coat as they ride a wagon back to his cabin. Hallam, noticing she's in distress from the cold, simply unbuttons his uniform shirt, takes it off, and hands it to her.
Just like that.
Just casually. He is completely unbothered by the sub-zero temperatures. And Luahati, who is still reeling from a devastating breakup, is suddenly staring at millions of alien abs.
It's a total sensory overload for her. But what we also have to remember about Zabrian physiology, and the sources heavily emphasize how much this complicates their dynamic, is the ocular phenomenon.
Oh, the eyes.
Yes. Zabrians do not have human pupils. Their eyes feature a branching center of color. And crucially, these eyes react involuntarily to internal states.
They can't hide it.
Not at all. When a Zabrian experiences extreme, overwhelming emotion or arousal, their eyes flash a blinding, brilliant white. It is a biological tell that cannot be suppressed, no matter how much military discipline one possesses.
Which creates an incredible tension. Because you have Warden Hallam, this stoic, tightly wound commander who is trying very hard to maintain a rigid professional boundary around his new human roommate.
But his body won't let him.
Exactly. His own biology keeps betraying him. Every time he has a reaction to her, his eyes basically light up the room. And looking at the logs, it's not just the biological tells that are causing friction, it's the sheer linguistic gap.
The cross-cultural miscommunication.
They are just wild.
The linguistic barrier is profound, and the sources really illustrate this as a crash course in semiotics. Hallam lacks the cultural schemata for Earth customs. He takes absolutely everything literally.
Everything.
For instance, when Luahati suggests they trode shirts because she feels guilty for taking his uniform in the freezing cold, Hallam's cultural framework interprets this as a formal, highly intimate gifting ritual.
He takes it so seriously.
He does. He is completely baffled by the suggestion that she undress in the snow to present her clothing to him as an exchange.
And it extends to the visual vocabulary, too. Later on, when she's unpacking, she shows him her favorite mug. It's opaque pink with a Valentine's heart and Cupid's arrow going right through it.
Right.
It's this precious gift from her late grandmother, her Lola. Hallam looks at this mug and becomes deeply concerned. To him, it looks absolutely nothing like an anatomical heart.
Not even close.
He categorizes it as a biothreat, or like a depiction of a deformed organ with a weapon violently shoved through it.
That specific detail is so revealing. On a frontier prison planet, a pierced organ signifies violence, death, or a medical emergency. It absolutely does not signify romance.
It's such a disconnect.
It highlights how much context we take for granted. Every idiom, every visual symbol Luahati uses carries centuries of human cultural baggage that is completely alien to him.
Which brings up the pinky promise scene. This is heavily documented in her notes, and it just perfectly captures that disconnect.
One of the best moments in the logs.
Definitely. Luahati wakes up late, looks out her low bedroom window, and sees Warden Hallam aggressively crouching in the melting snow. He looks completely tense, almost in pain.
Yeah.
Now, what she doesn't know is that he accidentally caught a glimpse of her through the window wearing nothing but his shirt. He had a massive, involuntary biological reaction. His eyes went blindingly white, and he had to drop to the ground to physically hide his arousal and regain his composure.
But Luahati's perspective is entirely clinical. She's a doctor.
Exactly.
She sees a man clutching his abdomen in the snow, and her brain immediately categorizes it as a medical emergency, like a burst appendix.
Right. So she leans out the window, squishing her chest against the sill, and forces this giant, terrifying alien military commander to interlock his massive pinky finger with hers to swear he isn't sick.
The visual of that is amazing.
And he does it. He locks his giant finger with hers while having a complete internal meltdown. It's this brilliant collision of human playfulness and Zabrian stoicism.
It is. But Hallam isn't the only one struggling to navigate human concepts. Warden 10 provides an incredible foil in these sources. 10 is actively trying to prove to Hallam that he is an expert on human female anatomy, having studied the educational documents that Tasha, the program coordinator, prepared. But he confidently and repeatedly mangles the terminology.
The scene where he's trying to say cunnilingus is legendary in these logs.
It really is.
He calls it cunnilinoleum, then he pivots to cunnilimoncello, and finally settles confidently on cunny lumberjack.
Cunny lumberjack.
And Hallam is just standing there, utterly baffled, while Tennant brags to him about finding his breakfast between his wife's legs.
What's fascinating here is how these comedic moments actually underscore a very serious sociological reality.
How so?
When we look past the humor, these language gaps highlight the extreme vulnerability of the human mail-order bride program on this planet. We are talking about human women who are millions of miles away from their home world, living with convicted murderers from a completely alien culture.
That is a terrifying reality when you step back and think about it.
Exactly. The fact that the wardens are struggling with basic anatomical vocabulary reveals how experimental this integration is. It requires immense patience, deliberate education, and total willingness from both sides to bridge that divide safely and ethically.
And that education clearly starts right in their own living quarters. I want to ask you about the dynamic in their cabin, because the environmental clash is just as severe as the biological one.
Oh, the unpacking.
Luahadi's unpacking style is heavily detailed in her logs. She is vibrant, chaotic, and she absolutely loves her stuff. She unpacks decorative pillows, scarves, bento boxes. She essentially detonates dozens of moving boxes all over Warden Hallam's meticulously sterile military-grade space.
A total explosion of color.
Yes. His house has zero clutter. He doesn't even have a chair at his desk. And suddenly he's drowning in fuzzy pink slippers. I kept wondering while reading this, why doesn't Hallam just throw her chaotic mess out? It seems totally out of character for a rigid military commander to tolerate this.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a fundamental aspect of his psychology. Yes, Hallam is overwhelmed by her mess, but as a commander, his core directive is protection.
Right.
He tells her explicitly that he would never yet her things out the window.
I love that he used the word yet.
It's perfect. Instead of throwing things out, he meticulously stacks her extra boxes at the foot of his own perfectly made bed. He does this because he recognizes that these chaotic items are important to her, and therefore, as her protector and assigned partner, they are important to him. He integrates her chaos into his order rather than destroying it.
And then there's the purple dildo incident.
We have to talk about that.
Because Hallam, ever the efficient commander, tries to help her clean up this newly integrated chaos. He reaches into a box and pulls out this large purple dildo.
Naturally.
And Luahadi panics. She starts screaming that it's a medical device. Hallam, totally deadpan, peers closer at it and questions why a medical device needs to be brightly colored.
A very logical question from his perspective.
Exactly. Luahadi then scrambles to cover her tracks and blurts out that it's actually an educational tool for teaching the alien convicts.
Which just makes it worse.
So much worse. And Hallam is just left staring at her, deeply concerned about what exactly she plans to do with this purple object in front of his men.
It's the peak of their miscommunication, but it also forces a shift in their dynamic. Hallam provides this unbreakable protective structure, and in return, Luahadi begins to introduce him to the concept of living rather than just surviving. She starts teaching him how to experience pleasure.
Yes, the food. She cooks him a traditional Filipino breakfast, taps the log, and then later makes him pancakes with Teratribe II maple syrup.
A complete revelation for him.
Right, because Hallam is a guy who eats purely for mechanical fuel. He shovels nutrient paste into his mouth just to keep his massive body running. She introduces him to the radical concept of eating food simply for the joy of tasting it. She is slowly, methodically bringing color and flavor into his very gray, survival-oriented world.
And that transition from mechanical survival to actual sustained thriving is exactly what she's trying to teach the broader colony too. Which brings us to her official duties.
Right, her actual job.
The primary reason she was brought to the planet, Luahadi genuinely takes on the role of educator. The sources detail a sex ed class she conducts for two of the unmarried convicts in the province, Zenit and Dorn.
And these guys are surprisingly earnest for convicted murderers. They show up to her class wearing human formal wear that they proudly refer to as Tux beanies.
Tux beanies.
They sit there meticulously taking notes, and Xena eagerly asks questions about human anatomy, dropping terms like breasticles and the clitorhinoceros.
It's amazing.
It is. But Luahati doesn't mock them at all. She leans into the educational tool excuse she made to Hallam and validates their curiosity, proving she has this incredibly patient bedside manner.
Her patience is paramount. But the medical records in our sources reveal the true, high-stakes emotional core of this deep dive. The primary medical reason Luahati was recruited isn't just basic education.
No, it's much bigger than that.
There's a human woman named Darcy on the planet who was pregnant with the very first human Zabrian baby. The biological implications, the anatomical hurdles, and the sheer risks of this interspecies pregnancy are entirely unprecedented in their medical history.
Right, because Darcy is a human woman growing a baby with a giant Zabrian head. The stakes are incredibly high.
They are.
To prepare for this unpredictable birth, Warden Hallam actually builds a high-speed slicer ambulance. He takes a regular hover vehicle, upgrades the engine, and adds a fully enclosed, climate-controlled medical compartment so they can transport Darcy quickly across the frozen wasteland if an emergency happens.
The engineering is quite impressive.
Very. And they take this slicer on a test run to Darcy and her Zabrian husband Fallon's ranch to perform the very first ultrasound.
And the medical notes from this ultrasound scene are profoundly moving. The sources describe Luahati holding the scanner over Darcy's abdomen, and the entire room goes completely silent.
You can just feel the anticipation.
Yes. They see the baby's face on the monitor, they see a strong spine, and wonderfully, they identify a tiny, nubby Zabrian tail.
It's a boy. And Darcy and her giant alien husband, Fallon, are both just openly weeping. Fallon's eyes are glowing bright white with absolute joy. It's this beautiful, triumphant moment of life blooming in the harshest, most unforgiving of environments.
It's a pivotal moment in the colony's history.
So what does this all mean? We have this incredibly tough, stoic warden, this chaotic, resilient doctor, and the successful cultivation of a new hybrid life. How do these pieces fit together in the broader narrative of the sources?
It ultimately reveals the hidden depths of Warden Hallam's true character, and it aligns perfectly with Luahati's own unspoken desires. We learned a critical piece of background information from the text. Hallam did not end up on this prison planet by accident, and he wasn't sent there as a punishment.
Right.
He voluntarily gave up his highly prestigious military career, everything he had ever worked for, to exile himself.
And the reason why is just staggering. He gave it all up simply to protect a child convict. He escorted a young boy to Zabria Prenar 1 because he felt deeply morally duty-bound to ensure that the child wasn't alone in this harsh penal environment. Hallam is, at his absolute core, a protector.
This raises an important question for Luahati, and it forces her to recontextualize everything she knows about him. She realizes he isn't just a grumpy, rigid wall of ice. He is a man capable of immense, selfless sacrifice.
A true partner.
Yes. And in response to that vulnerability, she opens up to him about her own timeline. She confesses the real reason she needs this provincial job to be temporary.
The biological clock?
Right. She's 36 years old. Her biological clock is ticking loudly in her ears. She wants a baby of her own more than anything else in the world. And her meticulously revised plan is to leave after her one-year contract is up to undergo fertility treatments entirely alone back on her home planet.
The tension there is palpable. Hallam now knows there is a hard biological deadline on her presence in his life. And Luahati is looking at a man who clearly values protection, family, and duty above his own ambition, the exact opposite of the man she left behind on Alora Station.
The contrast couldn't be sharper.
The dynamic between her ticking clock and his steadfast, protective nature creates this deeply compelling emotional gravity.
It really does. It showcases how two people, fundamentally broken by their pasts, can find an unexpected synergy.
And as we wrap up this deep dive into Luahati's logs, I think it's important to summarize the true beauty of these sources. This isn't just a clinical look at alien biology or the thermodynamics of Zabrian abs or even the funny translation errors about cunnilingus.
No, it's about much more than that.
It's fundamentally about a woman who refused to let a devastating, identity-crushing betrayal destroy her. She could have stayed in her sad, sterile apartment on floor 600. Instead, she threw herself into the absolute unknown, stilettos in the freezing mud and all, to build an entirely new life.
I would encourage you, listening right now, to reflect on your own life through that exact lens. When your carefully laid plans inevitably fall apart when the relationship fails or their career trajectory stalls, do you retreat into what is sterile, familiar, and comfortable?
That's the easy choice.
It is. Or do you rely on that concept of inertia to propel you forward into a completely foreign frontier? Sometimes the only way to survive the collapse of your old life is to boldly step into a new one, even if you don't know the language, the climate, or the customs.
Exactly. Which leaves you with one final lingering thought to mull over today as you go about your routine. We spend so much of our lives trying to shrink ourselves to fit perfectly into the spaces we think we belong in. We try to be neater, quieter, more accommodating.
Constantly compromising.
Yeah. But what if the only place you can truly be understood, the only place where your loud, chaotic mess is finally respected, protected, and genuinely valued, is in a world entirely alien to your own?
A profound thought to carry with you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the unknown, embrace your inner chaos, and we'll catch you on the next one.